All right, I reached out to Adam to see if he's gonna be able to make it today or not, but I'm not hearing back. So I think we'll just get going here. So I apologize, but I didn't look over the pull requests in the last couple of weeks um, since I just wasn't feeling very well this morning. So I ended up not working on it, but I'll try to get those updated for next week. There has been a fair amount of stuff going on though. One of the things that Adam has been working on for the past couple of weeks is trying to uh, change how shared blobs work in Blue Store, and we saw some initial really good numbers. I don't know how many folks remember from when we last got together, but some of his numbers were looking really good for snapshots. Basically, when you take snapshots and objects fragment into lots of shared blobs, um, right now we see a lot of overhead keeping track of the shared blobs. And he basically tried to make it so we only have one shared blob per object, but then kind of segment things differently. Uh, Unfortunately, though, once he fixed some things that were wrong in the initial version, the performance appeared to be, well, it wasn't the performance was lower, but the CPU usage was quite a bit higher. The peaks were still lower than main, but the floor was higher than main as well. So on average, it was probably about the same, but just maybe a little bit more condensed over time. So that didn't seem to be working out so hot. I still haven't gotten back to really looking at it in depth to see if I could figure out why that changed and maybe help him. But right now he's kind of thinking about maybe going down a different path and keeping shared blobs, but making it so that when you have a new extent that you've created, you could add that to an existing shared blob rather than basically creating a new shared blob and ending up with like basically one shared blob for every new extent in the snapshot scenario. So we'll see. That might be in some ways a little nicer than the other option in that it wouldn't require any kind of on-disk format change if you did it that way. So that's a side benefit, but it also means that we still have shared blobs kind of like we do now. So um, I'll check in with him later this either tomorrow or maybe next week and see how he's doing on that. But it's still really exciting stuff. I think it's still maybe the right way to go for fixing these snapshot issues that we have right now with our reading mirror and just snapshotting in general. If it's not working out great, there's still kind of my PR as the fallback option, which is to defragment objects when you take snapshots if they're heavily fragmented. And that's another way to get rid of snapshots because then you just basically shove everything back into a contiguous single snapshot and extent. But the downside of that is that there's more array amplification on disk and a little bit more space amplification. So this may be a little bit less attractive than doing it the way I was trying to do it. Let's see. So what else has been going on? From a performance perspective, we've gotten some other. Oh, actually, there is one big one. Casey, are you here? Is your mic on?
Yeah. Hey, Mark.
Hey, so there's without getting too specific about downstream, it sounds like you guys have a use case where you expect an ARM range to delete more than like 1,000 keys at once. And I was wondering if I could try to understand that because right now in upstream, we don't really have delete range uh, supported basically because it's causing all kinds of problems with tombstones. So I was wondering what is it that you guys are trying to do?
Um, Wait, is it true that it's not enabled upstream? I thought it was enabled, but only triggered if there are more than some
Uh,
number of keys.
yeah, it's like more than 1,000, but there was something where apparently I thought you guys were maybe expecting something else. So I was trying to understand what it is that you guys need from the OSD so we can make sure it's doing what you need.
Well, all of this work is around RGW's log trimming for multi-site replication logs. They
Okay,
grow and deletion is really expensive, and so without RM range, trimming has trouble keeping up at scale.
okay.
I did
Uh,
see their discussions around downstream, and it looks like we enabled it somewhere that it shouldn't have been.
yeah, and I apologize. I'm sick, so I'm like only half parsing what's going on. But um, is there something is there some change to upstream that needs to be enabled to support the use case you guys are trying to to you know do or what you're trying to accomplish?
I mean, my understanding is that uh, we've been happy with this behavior upstream for quite a while.
Okay,
Um,
so like the downstream change is just something that is already existing upstream.
uh, right. I think this was this cherry picked one of the things from upstream. Um, Basically, I guess because there was a bug fix in RGW that depended on the the OSD doing range deletes.
Okay,
But
yeah,
if we can't rely on range deletes, then we need to figure out something else.
we can do them. We just can't do them a lot. Like they have to be like eh, the basically the gist of it is that range tombstones are really expensive to iterate over, and so if you don't have like a right workload and you accumulate a ton of these things too quickly, then it'll basically make everything blow up during iteration. Um, I do have a PR that might help with this, where we could actually maybe re-enable it. It's this one. I'll put it in the chat window. Um, we can break the other RocksDB stuff out of there if we really want to, but and just make it the feature for the compaction on iteration part. Um, but I don't know if this only triggers when you iterate over a normal tombstone or if it also includes the kind of special range delete tombstones. So we might have to look into whether or not that would actually fix it. But if it does, it means that we might be able to get rid of our own checks and instead just let RocksDB do its thing.
Okay, interesting. Um, though I think, you know, what we do on main versus what we can do downstream on the Nautilus baseline are probably different things. I don't think that we can, or I
Yeah,
don't know what version of RocksDB we're even running there and what we can rely on.
I think in Nautilus we're okay. We've got like 6.2 or something. I think we updated it. So I think Nautilus is actually running on a moderately recent release of RocksDB. It's Luminous that's like ancient. It's like 6 years old and probably has a lot of bugs.
Okay, well, there's a email thread that we can continue the conversation there.
Sure, sounds good. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't like something custom being done downstream that needed to be supported upstream because I had just heard from Neha about it and the initial I think thought was that maybe um, downstream's behavior was differing from upstream since that we needed to like get these in sync with each other, but maybe that's not the case.
Yeah,
Um,
not that I know of. Um,
Okay.
just before we had this RM range stuff for log trimming, we had a lot of bugs around it, and so I imagine this is just cherry picking some RGW bug fixes that expected
Yeah.
that behavior.
Okay.
So
It's not.
either we revert it and fix the RGW behavior that was relying on it, or we find a way to
Yeah.
support it on that release.
Yeah. I think the probably the trickiest bit would be if you're coming in at like 900 deletes or something, right? Like it's just enough to be below the threshold, but it's too much where if you enabled delete range in RocksDB, it would start causing problems. Like there's probably some like area in there where it kind of is awful both ways, right?
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
you know,
I mean, RGW's use of this for log trimming, I think, um, well, I guess it depends on how many keys there are, but
yeah,
it essentially wants to delete all of them. The other place is object deletion, um, uses range deletes, I believe, to delete all of the OMAP keys.
okay. And yeah, it looks like if you're coming in at like 10 or 20 or something, some low value, it's actually a lot cheaper just to do normal deletes than it is to eat the, the range deletion tombstone for whatever reason. I haven't looked at it
Yeah.
enough, but for whatever reason, those things are awful to iterate over in RocksDB. They cause all kinds of problems. But, you know, if you're coming in at like, you know, a ton of keys, then you might want to just eat it.
Yeah, the reproducer that really sticks out to me is the one where you were just creating and deleting buckets nonstop, and that was creating the tombstones. But the mitigation of key count is what avoids it there.
Yeah. If, um, if this PR that I've got actually works with range delete tombstones too, and if it counts not just the single tombstone, but like the whole range of keys that were deleted to force the compaction, it might. I mean, at some point, I suppose that compaction could, if you have too many compactions, triggering it could be bad. But um, you know, depending on how well this option works, it could be really good. Just making it so that if you're like reiterating over the same range, um, you know, you can stop iterating over all these tombstones in the same range over and over again, you know, really quickly. I don't know if RGW does this, but in the OSD we've seen cases where we do like this kind of really bad pattern of like we seek to first, and then we walk the range a little bit, and we delete something, and then we go back and seek to first again, and then walk over everything that we just did, including the tombstones, and then delete like a couple more things, and then do that whole cycle all over again. That was what was causing like tons of problems, at least on the OSD side. I don't know if you guys have anything like that on in RGW, but that was like one of the big problems with especially the delete range when we were using it.
Um, I don't see how that would arise from our use of the replication logs. Those are mostly just either listing from a position to the end or deleting a range up to a given marker.
Okay, interesting. And so like in downstream, then with the current behavior that you guys were seeing, was it just doing a deletion one by one for all of that?
Before delete range, we were using an OMAP listing to get 1,000 keys and doing a per OMAP key delete on each.
Okay, okay.
And
And
that's
so it
essentially
was,
why OSD requests could only delete 1,000 keys at a time, and RGW had to loop and keep resending.
yeah, and it wasn't even like you were just telling the OSD to delete 1,000 things. You were literally sending a request for each one.
Well, it was a single OSD request, and CLS was looping over the OSD ops. So yeah,
Okay, that's better at least. I was afraid maybe you were having to issue a request for every single OMAP key over the network.
yeah,
So yeah, I'll follow up with Adam and Neha then, and just find out what they saw. It sounds like Adam was concerned about it, but I'll try to take a look and see. Um, and then yeah, we can circle back on it.
yeah, and I'll follow up on Niha's email in the meantime.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. I don't have anything else, I think, guys, and I'm pretty worn out. Does anyone want to present anything or say anything this week before we wrap up?
Get well.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's just something my kid had brought home from school, so it's that time of year. All right. Well, then have a good week, everyone. Thanks for coming. Talk to you next week.
Feel
Bye.
better soon, Mark.
Thanks.